Welcome, everyone. This is Trey. It's on the 22nd of October, 2016. I'm here on a Saturday with my friend Ben Watkins. We had a little exchange. It's been going for a day or two or three or so on Facebook. She started, I think, was it Cicero? Who was that you put a quote on the good?
Seneca.
Seneca. So we discussed that for a while, and then, let's see, someone came on, Mark Whitgruber, saying something about, well, we talked about gifts, and I was asking for justification for gifts. And whatever you want, Ben, to talk about, we can talk about the justification for the good. In other words, a moral imperative. Let me just read the OP. It says, do you ask me what the real good is and whence it derives? I will tell you, it comes from a good conscience, from honorable purposes, from right actions, from contempt of the gifts of chance, from an even and calm way of living, which treads but one path. And so the point of life, you said, is to be a good person. And so we've gone back and forth and back and forth. I'm trying to get a definition for what the good is, and I still have yet to hear it from you. Do you have some definition that you can give for the good?
Do I? Sure. So I come from a Western analytic tradition in philosophy that kind of started in Plato, moved on through the Stoics, the medievals, through the Enlightenment. And I take views of contemporary thinkers like Derek Parfit or T.M. Scanlon or Thomas Nagel. So I'm what's called a moral realist. So I think that there are evaluative statements that are true, basic evaluative statements that are just true in their own right. And so that reasons are fundamental. Facts are given to us by reasons. And there's reasons involving goodness. So we can have an objectivist and value-based meta-ethical framework for how we think about our normative concept. So if we were to talk about good, I would say we would call something good. What we mean roughly is that there are certain kinds of facts about this thing's nature or properties that would, in certain situations, give us or others strong reasons to respond to this thing in some positive way, such as choosing, using, wanting, producing, or preserving this thing. So that's kind of a, that's a definition that you would find in like a contemporary work in meta-ethics, in like T.M. Scanlon or Derek Parfit or Bernard Gert. And so it's the meta-ethical framework is broadly identified as ethical non-naturalism or moral non-naturalism. Sometimes in its more normative uses, it's called ethical intuitionism.
Okay. And I certainly agree with that. I think that there are moral intuitions, and we have been determined with such things. And you talked about choosing, wanting, and deserving the good, I think, or something.
Well, now, so I've at this point I've given you a definition of what I think the good is. So that's obviously a perennial question of philosophy. I've by no means settled the matter. A lot of ink has been spilled on that question. So I think it only dialectically appropriate at this point for you to give a definition of what you think the good is.
Sure.
How do you conceive of it?
Okay, yeah, and this is basically how our conversation has gone. Sorry for the dirt and grease. I was fixing my daughter's car. I was expecting to hang out today. So for me, the good is that which centers around the idea of the sanctity of existence. And I certainly believe that there are objective facts, just like you do, but I can give a justification or rationalization for some.
Again, I want to press you on this right here before you even go any further. The sanctity of existence. What do you mean by that? Because when I say earlier, like when you quoted Seneca, the gifts of chance, that's a useful metaphor. is when you're saying the sanctity of existence, is that a useful metaphor? What do you mean by is there a property that we call sanctity that is in the universe? I don't know what you
Yes.
mean when you say the sanctity of the universe.
Sure. Yes. Well, I haven't really described it yet. But for example, the gifts of chance is not a useful metaphor. It's irrational. It makes no sense whatsoever. But my describing the sanctity of existence is saying that that which exists is better than non-existence. And the only reason that I can say that is because there is such a thing as existence. And if there is such a thing as existence such that I have, I therefore must appeal to something that gives me that existence. And that which gives me my existence must be a valuer, because otherwise, if there were no valuer for my existence, I would not be, because I am dependent in my existence. So therefore, if I am dependent upon something that is a valuer, that valuer, by definition, must be non-contingent, I say self-existent, that is a valuer. Otherwise, there would be no value. This is what I kept pushing you on your view.
Why would there be no? So if there's no valuer, there'd be no value. How does that follow?
How do you justify?
No. You don't have to ask me a question. You tell me.
You cannot.
No, you tell me. Why does it follow
I'm happy to do that.
There's no valuer that there is no value? Explain that inference. What piece of reasoning allows you to make that inference?
Because non-value entities, that which does not have efficiency, to use this Aristotelian categories, cannot give that which it does not possess. So you're saying if let's say the universe is naturalistic and there's no efficient causes, which Darwinian synthesis says, you cannot have non-value valuing value into existence. It's nonsense. It violates the law of identity.
Well, no one's putting forward the claim you just said.
Do you concede that value exists?
Yeah, value something is real. Sure.
Okay. And
I'm a moral realist. So
okay.
I think there are evaluative statements that are true.
And where does the valuer come from?
Where does the what come from?
The valuer.
There is no valuer. See, that's where your missing piece of reasoning is going from. Because there's no valuer, therefore there's no value.
Are you a valuer, Ben?
I am a valuer, but
then there are valuers, right?
Do not depend on me for their truth. That would be subjectivism. That's what you said is false. So it can't. If you're going to have an objective, evaluative truth, its truth cannot depend on the attitudes or responses of any observer, including a valuer.
No. The valuer I'm talking about is I say.
Right there. That is the decisive objection to what you are putting forward. It's decisive.
We'll unpack it. You cannot have that which is self-existent cannot be subject to change. Would you agree with that?
No. I'm not playing those word games. See, now you're asking me questions instead of explaining your view. You said that
just put it into a statement then.
Truths do not depend on people's attitudes or responses. Correct? That's what an objective truth is.
We're not talking about people.
No, exactly. So a valuer doesn't matter. If you're saying, well, where's the valuer?
We're talking about an say valuer, my friend.
It doesn't matter where the valuer is.
No, you just don't know what you're talking about.
Or not. The truth of an evaluative statement doesn't depend on any observer. Period. That's what it means for it to be an objective truth. Otherwise, it would be a subjective truth, like Jon Stewart is funny. That's a subjective truth. If no one thought that Jon Stewart was funny, it wouldn't be true that he was funny. But that's not the same thing as when we say happiness is better than misery. That would still be true, even if there was no one around to perceive that truth.
So happiness centers around the objective reality that
exists. Don't even try to put it in other
You just don't want me to talk. That's all.
Don't try to put it in other terms.
Ben, do you want to have a conversation, or are you just going to
keep them in the terms that I've put here? Happiness is better than misery. That's the proposition I'm putting forward.
Happiness is existence, right?
Else onto that, that's not what I'm saying.
You know you lost. That's your problem, and you don't want to talk about it.
Sure, I lost then. I'm standing on the force of the argument I'm putting forward here.
You won't explain it though. You won't even let it be questioned.
I
You just
literally-
every time I open my mouth, you say, "I'm not listening to what you're saying."
Well, because you're trying to phrase it in uncharitable terms or terms that I frankly don't understand what you're when you're saying. Well, don't you mean X, Y, and Z? I don't know what you mean by X, Y, and Z because you won't define those terms. And then I'm seeing that all this kind of comes back to sort of a quasi-cosmological argument, where all these value things need to be dependent on something else. When I'm saying that the nature of happiness itself is sufficient to make it good. There's nothing else. There's no other sort of fact that makes that true.
And it's centered around the value of existence,
good.
right?
So that's a philosophical primitive for me.
In other words, it's a blind faith maxim that you will not question.
Is faith an epistemic vice?
No. Actually, but it must be based in rational.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Sure. Then call it faith. If you want to call it faith. I mean, all of our knowledge bottoms out in primitives.
Justified faith, then.
So, justified. See, now I don't know what you mean by these terms. All of a sudden, you've put justified and faith together. Well,
everybody exercises faith.
Is a common interpretation is belief without justification. So if you're saying justified faith,
no, it's not. That's not what faith is.
That could be a contradiction. I'm not saying that's how you're using it, but you're just being very fast and loose with the terminology instead of being precise and defining.
You're being very defensive, is what you're being.
Sure, I'm defending my view. So
no, you're not. Yeah, you are, but you're not defending with an open mind.
Well, then I'm. It's open now. Go ahead. Don't ask me a question. You
okay.
Talk.
Okay. So first of all, let's say this: it's not possible to exercise faith. I'm sorry, it's not possible to not exercise faith as a contingent being because we are not omniscient. Would you concede that?
So instead of going really fast, let's take that slow part by part. You're asking me to concede a point. So say that proposition again.
Okay. Do you concede that faith is a necessary corollary to contingent existence?
Is a necessary corollary to contingent existence? No, I don't know what that means. Okay. And I'm pretty sure you don't know what that means either.
Okay, let's see.
I'll lead with my kid on this one.
No. Are you able to have absolute certainty about anything? Let's put it that way.
Sure. I know I'm not omniscient.
You know you're not omniscient.
Sure.
Okay.
I know that.
Okay. Do you know that absolutely?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you know that you're not? Well, actually, no. I would say that you're probably right in that. Okay. Now, that actual fact that you are absolutely certain about is a negation, right?
What do you mean?
In other words, you put into a negative exactly what I was saying.
I don't know. So again, you're saying
that it's not possible for contingent.
It's a negation.
I'm sorry.
What is a negation, and what are you saying is a negation?
Not omniscient is a negation of omniscience.
The property of omniscience. I do not possess that property.
And you're absolutely certain about that, right?
On me.
Right. You're absolutely certain about that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Is that because you are contingent, you are a dependent being? In other words, you're not omniscient?
No, that's just how it seems to me.
Oh, it can't seem to you because you're absolutely certain, remember?
Well, that's how it appears to me, then.
Then it's not for certain.
Why not? What do you mean it's not for certain? It's by the impossibility of the contrary.
Right. So you're certain that
it's impossible for
then the court
to not obtain. So why can't I have absolute certainty in that claim?
You know what?
Why not?
Then I got to work on my car. We're not making any progress here. You're just being defensive. We're not having a real conversation here. Yeah. I mean, if you want to, are you drinking moonshine there?
No, I'm drinking water.
Oh, okay. So am I.
H2O.
You seem kind of funny. Okay, I'm gonna and if that smart mouth Mart Whitgruber wants to have a hangout, I'm fine to have it. But
yeah,
he seems to be a talker. I like you. Let me say this: I really like you, Ben. You're always very kind. You're terribly intelligent. You say you don't understand what I'm saying, but I feel like you're very charitable, and you're very sharp,
Well, thank you.
and you're an enjoyable interlocutor. I mean, it's not seem to go very well now, but overall, I really like it, and I really like the way you're always very kind, and you
Oh,
never
well,
get
thank you.
nasty.
I do
So thank
strive to do that. I like to see constructive conversation on both sides. I like to see good arguments
and
on both sides. I
and
just
and
love
and
philosophy. So
yeah, and you're top notch with that. So thank you very much. But I'm gonna go. My daughter's car is in a mess. It's got about 10
well,
things
good
wrong
luck.
with it. I'm gonna try to fix them. So anyway, so we'll be talking later, and I
Okay,
appreciate the interaction. Okay, Ben.
take it easy.
All right, I'll see you. Greetings to your wife.